My daughter-in-law served me dog food on a plate while my son filmed and laughed. 2 days later, she was in the hospital. The doctor asked me what I fed her. I smiled knowingly. Before we start, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. My name is Olive, and at 68 years old, I never imagined I'd be telling this story. But sometimes life teaches you that the people you trust most can hurt you the deepest, and the only way forward is to stand up for yourself, even when your legs are shaking. I wasn't always alone. 3 years ago, I lost my husband Robert to a sudden heart attack. We'd been married for 42 years, built a life together from nothing, raised our son Marcus with values we thought would last a lifetime. Robert was a veteran, a man who believed in honor and family above everything else. On his deathbed, he held my hand and said, "Olive, you're stronger than you know. Promise me you'll take care of yourself." I promised him I would, though at the time I had no idea how much that promise would be tested. After Robert passed, the house felt too big, too empty. Every corner held a memory. Every creak in the floorboards reminded me of his footsteps. Marcus, my only child, suggested I move in with him and his wife Jessica. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone," he said, his eyes so earnest, so much like his father's. "We have plenty of room, and Jessica would love to have you closer." Those words felt like a warm embrace at the time. How wrong I was to believe them. I sold my house, the one Robert and I had paid off after 30 years of mortgage payments, and gave most of the money to Marcus to help with his mortgage. "It's what Dad would want," I told him, watching tears well up in his eyes. I kept just enough for my personal expenses and moved into their guest room with 2 suitcases and a heart full of hope that I'd found my place again. For 28 years, I taught 3rd grade at Madison Elementary. I shaped young minds, wiped tears, celebrated small victories, and learned that patience and kindness could overcome almost any challenge. I retired at 65, but those teaching instincts never left me. I could read a room, sense when something was off, understand the unspoken language of human behavior. These skills would later save me, though I didn't know it yet. In my son's home, I tried to be the perfect house guest who happened to be family. I cooked Marcus's favorite pot roast every Sunday, just like I did when he was young. I helped with household expenses using my pension and Robert's military benefits. I stayed quiet when Jessica complained about her day, offered advice only when asked, and retreated to my room when they had friends over. I became an expert at being present but invisible, helpful but not intrusive. Jessica seemed sweet at first. She was a marketing executive, always perfectly put, together with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She called me Mom in public but Olive when we were alone. She thanked me for the meals I cooked but mentioned how her mother's recipes were different, better. I told myself she needed time to adjust to having me there. I thought I was building a new chapter, finding purpose in being a helpful mother and grandmother to my 2 teenage grandchildren who visited every other weekend. I thought the sacrifice of my independence was worth the warmth of family around me. I thought love would be enough to smooth over any rough edges. I was wrong about everything. My days had developed a gentle rhythm in Marcus and Jessica's house, a routine that gave me comfort in the wake of Robert's absence. Every morning at 6 o'clock, I would slip out of bed quietly, careful not to wake anyone, and make my way to the kitchen in my worn terry cloth slippers that Robert had given me for our last Christmas together. The house was always coldest at this hour, but I liked the solitude, the way the morning sun would paint golden stripes across the marble countertop that Jessica was so proud of. I'd brew my tea in the same china cup I'd saved from my old house, one from my wedding set, with tiny blue flowers around the rim. Standing by the kitchen window, I could see the neighbor's oak tree, watch the squirrels beginning their daily adventures, and sometimes catch sight of Mr. Peterson walking his ancient beagle. These quiet moments were mine alone, before the house filled with the chaos of Jessica's morning workout videos and Marcus's hurried shower before work. By 7, I'd have Marcus's breakfast ready. 2 eggs over easy, Wheat toast cut diagonally just how he liked it since he was 5. 3 strips of bacon, and fresh orange juice. He'd rush in, tie half knotted, kiss my cheek, and eat standing up while scrolling through his phone. "Thanks, Mom, you're the best," he'd mumble through bites, and for those few seconds, I could pretend we were back in our old kitchen, that Robert was reading the paper at the table, that life was simpler. Jessica never ate breakfast. She'd grab her green smoothie from the refrigerator, the one she made every Sunday in bulk, and click past in her heels without a word. I learned not to offer her anything after the first month, when she'd explained, rather coolly, that she followed a very specific nutrition plan that didn't include heavy morning meals. After they left, the house became mine for a few precious hours. I'd tend to my herb garden on the small balcony off the living room. It wasn't much, just a few pots of basil, rosemary, thyme, and the mint that threatened to take over everything if I didn't watch it carefully. Robert had built me a greenhouse at our old house, but this modest collection was enough. The plants didn't judge, didn't whisper, didn't look at me with barely concealed impatience. They just grew, reaching toward the sun, grateful for water and care. Tuesdays were for grocery shopping. I'd take Jessica's car, the one she complained about because it was 3 years old, and drive to the market where I knew every cashier by name. I'd buy the ingredients for the week's meals with my own money, always making sure to get Jessica's oat milk and gluten-free pasta, Marcus's favorite beer, and treats for when the grandchildren visited. The bill usually came to about $200, which I paid gladly, grateful to contribute. Thursdays meant calling my sister Helen in Florida. She'd moved there after her husband died, said the sunshine helped with the grief. We'd talk for exactly 1 hour, sharing memories, discussing our health concerns, and carefully avoiding the subject of how our children treated us. Helen would hint that things weren't perfect with Marcus and Jessica, but I'd change the subject. Family business stayed in the family. Evenings were for cooking dinner. I'd spend 2 hours preparing meals from scratch, setting the table with the everyday dishes, making sure everything was perfect by 6:30 when they came home. We'd eat together most nights, though conversation was usually Jessica talking about her work victories or complaining about incompetent colleagues, while Marcus nodded and checked his phone. This was my life. Predictable, sometimes lonely, but stable. I had a roof over my head, my son nearby, and a purpose in keeping the household running. If I sometimes felt like an unpaid housekeeper rather than a beloved mother, I pushed those thoughts away. This was family. This was what Robert would want me to do, wasn't it? The first crack in my peaceful routine came on a Thursday afternoon in late September. I was arranging fresh dahlias from the garden in the living room when I heard Jessica on the phone in the home office. Her voice carried that fake sweetness she used with clients, but the words made my hands freeze on the flower stems. "Oh, you should see the Sunset Manor facility, Karen. It's absolutely gorgeous. Like a resort, really. They have yoga classes, a pool, even wine tastings on Fridays." She laughed, that tinkling sound that never seemed genuine. "I know, right? Nothing like those depressing old folks' homes from our parents' generation. Some of these places are nicer than hotels." My heart skipped, but I told myself she must be researching for a client. Jessica worked in marketing for a senior living chain after all. It was probably just work. I continued arranging the flowers, but my hands trembled slightly, causing me to prick my finger on a thorn. The following week, Marcus started asking odd questions during dinner. "Mom, have you ever thought about updating your will?" he asked casually, twirling spaghetti on his fork. "I mean, since Dad passed, there might be some changes you want to make." "Everything's in order, sweetheart," I replied, passing him the garlic bread. "Your father and I took care of all that years ago." He exchanged a quick glance with Jessica. "But wouldn't it be easier if I had power of attorney? Just in case something happens. You're not getting any younger, and it would streamline things if you ever needed help with medical decisions or finances." The pasta suddenly felt like cardboard in my mouth. Robert had specifically warned me about keeping financial independence, making me promise never to sign away power of attorney unless I was truly incapacitated. "I'll think about it," I said quietly, and the subject dropped. But Jessica's jaw tightened in that way it did when she didn't get what she wanted. Strange things started happening around the house. My favorite china teacup, the one with the blue flowers, appeared cracked one morning. Then a plate from the same set was found shattered in the trash. "So sorry, Mom," Jessica said when I asked about it. "I was unloading the dishwasher and it just slipped. You know how fragile those old things are." A week later, another piece broke, then another. My wedding china was disappearing piece by piece, and each time Jessica had an excuse. Too fragile. An accident. Maybe we should just get rid of the whole set before someone gets hurt on a sharp edge. I started keeping the remaining pieces in my room, wrapped in tissue paper in a box under my bed. The whispers started next. Jessica began hosting her book club at the house. 6 women who looked like variations of her, all highlighted hair and designer handbags. They'd gather in the living room while I stayed in the kitchen, preparing their refreshments. But I could hear them when they thought I couldn't. "She's so sweet," Jessica's friend Melissa said one evening, "but it must be such a burden having her here all the time." "You have no idea," Jessica replied. "She's getting more confused lately. Yesterday, she couldn't remember where she put her reading glasses." She lowered her voice. "Marcus is worried about early-stage dementia." I touched the reading glasses hanging on the chain around my neck, the same place I'd kept them for 20 years. I'd never lost them, never forgotten where they were. Why would Jessica say that? Then came the medication incidents. I kept my pills organized in a weekly container, each compartment clearly labeled. But I started finding them in different spots. The bathroom counter instead of my nightstand, the kitchen cabinet instead of my dresser. Once, I found them in the refrigerator next to the milk. "You must have put them there yourself, Mom," Marcus said when I mentioned it, his voice gentle but concerned. "Maybe you should let Jessica help you organize your medications." Something cold settled in my stomach, a feeling I recognized from 30 years of teaching. It was the same sensation I got when catching a student in a lie, when the story didn't quite add up, when innocent eyes weren't quite innocent enough. I spent the next 2 weeks constructing elaborate explanations for everything, building a fortress of rationalization around the growing unease in my chest. Jessica must be under pressure at work. The Peterson account she'd mentioned was worth millions, and she'd been staying up late, laptop glowing in the living room until past midnight. Stress made people say things they didn't mean. I'd seen it countless times with parents during parent-teacher conferences, exhausted mothers and fathers snapping at each other over report cards. When I found my reading glasses in the freezer next to the ice cream, I actually laughed. Getting old, Olive, I told myself, even though I distinctly remembered placing them on my nightstand. The mind plays tricks, doesn't it? Robert used to misplace his car keys constantly, and we'd find them in the most ridiculous places. This was just part of aging. Nothing sinister, nothing planned. I started a notebook to track where I put things, partly to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my memory, partly to show Marcus and Jessica that I was perfectly capable. Glasses on nightstand, 9:15 p.m., I'd write. Heart medication in bathroom cabinet, 9:20 p.m. But even the notebook started moving around, appearing in places I hadn't left it. I must be more tired than I thought. The grief counselor had warned me that losing Robert might affect my concentration for years. To prove everything was fine, I threw myself into being the perfect mother-in-law. I baked Jessica's favorite lemon bars for her book club, using my grandmother's recipe that had won 3 county fairs. I stayed later in my room, coming out only to cook and clean, making myself smaller, quieter, less of a burden. When Jessica mentioned how her mother organized spices alphabetically, I reorganized our entire spice rack that night. When she complained about water spots on the glasses, I hand-dried every dish. "You're trying too hard, Olive," Helen said during our Thursday call. "Why are you bending over backwards for that woman?" "She's Marcus's wife," I replied, folding laundry while we talked. "She's family. Sometimes it takes time to adjust to living together. Remember how long it took you to get used to Bill's mother living next door? Helen was quiet for a moment. Bill's mother never made me feel unwelcome in my own home. It's not my home, I corrected gently. It's theirs. I'm just grateful they took me in. But Helen's words nagged at me. That evening, I made Jessica's favorite dinner. Grilled salmon with asparagus and quinoa. Everything organic, everything perfectly seasoned. I even bought the expensive wine she liked, the one that cost $40 a bottle. "This is nice, Olive," Jessica said, taking a small bite, "though the salmon is a tiny bit overcooked. My mother always sets a timer for exactly 12 minutes. "I'll remember that for next time," I said, my own salmon tasting like sawdust. Marcus reached over and squeezed my hand. "It's perfect, Mom. Just like you used to make for Dad and me." For a moment, I felt better. My son still loved me. Whatever tension existed with Jessica was just an adjustment period. Every family went through this. I thought about Robert's mother, how she'd criticized my housekeeping for the first 5 years of our marriage, until one day she showed up with flowers and apologized. These things worked themselves out. That night, I found a brochure for Sunset Manor tucked under my pillow. No note, no explanation, just glossy photos of smiling seniors playing cards and swimming in a pool. I folded it carefully and placed it in my jewelry box, next to Robert's military medals. Maybe Jessica had put it there by accident while changing sheets. Maybe it had fallen from somewhere and ended up under my pillow by coincidence. I was becoming an expert at explaining away the obvious, at ignoring the alarm bells that 30 years of teaching had trained me to recognize. Because the alternative was accepting that my son, my Marcus, the boy I'd raised alone while Robert worked double shifts, was part of something cruel. That was impossible, wasn't it? The morning that changed everything started like any other. Marcus had left early for a golf tournament with clients, and Jessica was at her Saturday yoga class. I decided to dust their home office, something I rarely did since Jessica preferred to handle that room herself. But she'd been complaining about allergies, and I thought it would be a nice surprise. The papers were right there on Marcus's desk, not even hidden. Maybe they thought I was too stupid to understand them, or maybe they'd gotten careless. The first document was from Sunset Manor, the same facility from the brochure under my pillow. But this wasn't marketing material. It was an application for residency, dated 2 weeks ago with my name filled in. Most of the information was complete. My social security number, Medicare information, medical history. The signature line was blank, but there was a yellow sticky note in Jessica's handwriting, "Get POA first, then we can sign." My legs went weak and I had to sit down in Marcus's leather chair. POA, power of attorney. They were planning to move me into a nursing home against my will. With shaking hands, I looked through the other papers. There was a printout of my bank statements from the last 3 months, each withdrawal and deposit highlighted in yellow. Marcus had written notes in the margins. Monthly pension, $3,200. Social Security, $1,850. Dad's military benefits, $2,100. At the bottom, he'd calculated the total, $750 our monthly income. Beneath that was another calculation. Sunset Manor cost, $4,500 month. Remaining, $2,650 monthly profit. Profit. My son had written the word profit about my life, my income, my future. I kept reading, each page making me sicker. There was a legal document from a lawyer I didn't know, outlining the process for declaring an elderly person mentally incompetent in our state. Key phrases were highlighted: pattern of confusion, inability to manage daily affairs, risk to themselves or others. Clipped to it was a log in Jessica's neat printing, documenting my supposed incidents of confusion. October 3rd, found reading glasses in refrigerator. October 7th, couldn't remember where she put medication. October 12th, forgot she had already made dinner, tried to cook twice. That last one was a complete lie. I had never done that. My hands trembled as I picked up the next document. It was from our family lawyer, Mr. Brennan, who had handled Robert's will. But this was addressed to Marcus. dated 6 months ago, right after I'd moved in. As requested, here's the information about your mother's assets. House, sold, $320,000, already transferred to you. Remaining savings, approximately $50,000. Jewelry and personal effects, estimated value $30,000, including your father's military memorabilia and your mother's engagement ring, 2-carat diamond circa 1950s. I instinctively touched my engagement ring, the one Robert had saved for 8 months to buy when he was just 22. They had cataloged it like inventory. The last item made me gasp aloud. It was a printout from a life insurance company's website showing the payout value of a policy I didn't know existed. Marcus had taken out a life insurance policy on me 6 months ago, right when I moved in. The death benefit was $500,000, with Marcus and Jessica as beneficiaries. I heard a car in the driveway and quickly photographed everything with my phone, my hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get clear pictures. I straightened the papers exactly as I'd found them and hurried to the kitchen, forcing myself to appear normal as Jessica's key turned in the lock. "Oh, Olive," she called out, her yoga mat under her arm. "Did you take your pills this morning? I found them in the strangest place again, behind the coffee maker. We really need to talk about getting you some help with medication management." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the calculation in her eyes. She wasn't concerned. She was building a case. "Found them," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady. Silly me. But I hadn't put them behind the coffee maker. I was absolutely certain of that. Jessica's parents arrived the following Saturday for what she called a special family dinner. I should have known something was wrong when she insisted I join them at the main table instead of eating in the kitchen, like I usually did when her parents visited. Marcus seemed nervous, avoiding my eyes, fiddling with his phone constantly. The grandchildren were noticeably absent, sent to their other grandparents for the weekend. I'd prepared all afternoon, roast chicken with herbs from my balcony garden, garlic mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds, and a chocolate cake from scratch. Jessica's mother, Patricia, complimented the table setting, though she made a point of mentioning that the plates didn't match perfectly. Her father, Richard, a retired bank executive, kept checking his watch as if he had somewhere more important to be. "This looks wonderful, Olive," Jessica said with that false brightness that made my skin crawl. "Though I made something special just for you. You've been having some digestive issues lately, haven't you?" I hadn't mentioned any such thing, but I saw Marcus nod as if this was established fact. Jessica disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a plate she set in front of me with a flourish. "High-protein pâté," she announced. "My trainer recommended it for seniors. Great for maintaining muscle mass." The smell hit me first. It was wrong. Off somehow, with an undertone that reminded me of the pet aisle at the grocery store. The texture was grainy, formed into a small mound with a sprig of parsley on top, like some kind of sick joke. Everyone was watching me. Jessica had her phone out, pretending to text, but holding it at an angle I recognized from years of catching students recording fights. "Go on, Mom," Marcus said, his voice strained. "Jessica went to a lot of trouble to get this special food for you." I looked at my son, searching his face for some sign of the boy who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, who cried when he accidentally broke my Mother's Day vase in 3rd grade. But his eyes were fixed on his own plate, jaw tight with something that might have been shame or anticipation. I took a small forkful. The moment it touched my tongue, I knew. The texture, the smell, the way it coated my mouth. This was dog food. Wet, canned dog food. Probably the expensive kind, knowing Jessica. The kind with real beef and garden vegetables that cost $5 a can. Patricia gasped theatrically. "Oh my goodness, is she actually eating it?" That's when I saw Marcus raise his phone too. They were both recording. Richard chuckled, shaking his head. "I told you she'd fall for it. The old bat probably can't even taste the difference anymore." "Make sure you get her face," Jessica instructed Marcus, not even pretending anymore. "This is going viral. Confused grandma eats dog food thinking it's pâté. It's perfect." The room erupted in laughter. Patricia was dabbing at her eyes, careful not to smudge her mascara. Richard's belly shook as he pointed at me, saying something about this being better than the videos Jessica usually showed them. My son, my beloved Marcus, was laughing too, the phone steady in his hand as he captured my humiliation. I set down my fork carefully, deliberately, the way I used to when dealing with particularly cruel children on the playground. I dabbed my lips with my napkin, folded it, and placed it beside the plate. Then I looked each of them in the eye, memorizing their faces in this moment when they thought they'd won. "Excuse me," I said quietly, standing with all the dignity I could muster. I seemed to have lost my appetite. As I walked to my room, I heard Jessica call out, "Don't forget to take your pills, Olive. I put them somewhere special for you to find. It's like a little treasure hunt for your failing memory." Their laughter followed me down the hallway. Behind my closed door, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply sat on my bed and looked at Robert's picture on my nightstand. "You were right," I whispered to his photograph. "I'm stronger than I knew." I waited until 3 in the morning before creeping out of my room. The house was silent except for Marcus's snoring and the occasional hum of the refrigerator. In my hand was the spare key to Jessica's home office that I'd found weeks ago while cleaning. She didn't know I had it, probably forgot it existed, tucked behind the expired coupons in the kitchen junk drawer. The office door opened silently, and I used my phone's flashlight to navigate. If they were going to destroy me, I needed to know exactly what I was up against. The filing cabinet was locked, but Robert had taught me how to pick simple locks years ago, a skill from his military days that he'd shared during a playful afternoon. "You never know when you might need this, Liv," he'd said. Tonight, I blessed his memory as the lock clicked open. The folders were meticulously organized, labeled in Jessica's perfect handwriting. Olive, financial. Olive, medical. Olive, legal. Olive, evidence. My stomach turned as I pulled out each one, photographing pages as quickly as I could. The financial folder revealed more than I'd imagined. They'd somehow obtained copies of every account Robert and I had ever held. There were sticky notes calculating the value of bonds that would mature in 2 years, estimates of what Robert's gun collection would fetch at auction, even a jewelry appraisal for pieces I'd inherited from my mother. The engagement ring alone was valued at $45,000 due to its vintage setting and clarity. But it was a printed email exchange between Jessica and someone named Derek that made my blood run cold. "Once you have POA," Derek had written, "you can liquidate everything. The house sale already netted you $320K, but there's at least another $400K in accessible assets. The key is establishing incompetence before she realizes what's happening. Keep documenting everything, every misplaced item, every repeated story, every moment of confusion. The courts eat that stuff up." Jessica had replied, "Already on it. Marcus is finally on board after I showed him the numbers. He was hesitant about the insurance policy, but $500K is $500K. Between that and selling her stuff, we can pay off the mortgage, send both kids to private college, and still have enough for the vacation house. She's 68. Actuarial tables give her maybe 15, 20 years. Sunset Manor is actually nice, she'll be fine." They were betting on my death, planning their vacation home while calculating how many years I had left. The medical folder was worse. They'd been doctor shopping, finding physicians who'd never treated me to write concerning reports based on Jessica's descriptions. One doctor noted, "Significant cognitive decline reported by family despite never examining me." Another prescribed antipsychotic medications for aggressive dementia behaviors, pills I'd never taken, never needed. The prescriptions were filled, though. Where were those medications going? The legal folder contained draft documents giving Marcus complete control over my finances, my medical decisions, my living situation. There were 3 different versions, each more restrictive than the last. The final version essentially made me a ward of the state, with Marcus as guardian. All it needed was a judge's signature. The evidence folder was the most violating. Photos of me sleeping, mouth open, looking vulnerable and old. Videos of me searching for things they'd hidden, edited to loop so I looked frantically confused. Audio recordings of conversations taken out of context. They'd even photographed my room when I wasn't there, documenting what they called hoarding behavior. My box of Robert's letters, my photo albums, the china I'd saved. At the bottom of the cabinet was a brochure for a company called Senior Solutions. Their tagline made me sick: helping families transition difficult seniors with dignity. It was a company that specialized in forcing elderly parents into care facilities. Their success rate was 94%. Jessica had already scheduled a consultation for next month. I photographed everything until my phone storage was nearly full. As I carefully returned each folder, I noticed one final document on Jessica's desk. It was a draft social media post. The hardest decision a family can make is accepting that their loved one needs professional memory care. We're heartbroken, but know this is best for Mom's safety and well-being. Thank you all for your support during this difficult time. It was dated for 2 weeks from now. Back in my room, I collapsed onto the bed, my body shaking so violently I had to wrap myself in Robert's old military blanket just to feel anchored to something real. The tears came then, hot and silent, soaking into the pillow as years of memories crashed over me like waves determined to drown me. I remembered Marcus at 5 years old, feverish with pneumonia, how I'd stayed awake for 3 straight nights, placing cool washcloths on his forehead, singing the only lullaby that would calm him. The doctor said if I'd waited even one more day to bring him in, we might have lost him. I'd sold my grandmother's pearl necklace to pay for his treatment because Robert's insurance wouldn't cover the specialist. I saw him at 8, crying because the other kids made fun of his secondhand clothes. I'd taken extra shifts at the school, tutoring in the evenings to buy him the sneakers he desperately wanted. The look on his face when he opened that box, pure joy, like I'd given him the world. "You're the best mom ever," he'd said, throwing his little arms around my neck. At 17, when Robert was deployed and Marcus got into his first-choice college, I'd emptied my retirement account without hesitation. "Your education is more important than my retirement," I'd told him. "Dad and I will figure it out. We always do." He'd cried then, too, promising he'd take care of me when I was old. "You'll never have to worry, Mom. I'll make sure you're always safe and happy." The irony of that promise burned like acid in my throat. I pulled out our family photo albums, running my fingers over the images. Marcus's high school graduation, where he'd insisted I stand in the middle of every photo. His wedding, where he danced with me to "A Song for Mama," both of us crying as Jessica watched with what I now recognized as impatience. The birthday parties, the Christmases, the Sunday dinners that stretched back decades. Had it all been a lie? Had I raised a son capable of this cruelty, or had Jessica transformed him into someone I didn't recognize? I found the Mother's Day card from last year, the last one that felt genuine. "Mom, you sacrificed everything for me. You went without so I could have. You taught me what love really means. I hope someday I can repay even a fraction of what you've given me." The sob that escaped me then was primal, torn from somewhere deep in my chest. This was how he planned to repay me? By stealing my freedom, my dignity, my life savings? By feeding me dog food while laughing with his wife's parents? By betting on my death like I was a horse at the racetrack? I looked at my hands, wrinkled now, spotted with age, the wedding ring loose on my thinning finger. These hands had changed thousands of diapers, made 10,000 meals, sewn Halloween costumes, and held Marcus through every nightmare. They'd graded papers until midnight to earn extra money, scrubbed floors when the cleaning job was all I could find, planted gardens to save money on, groceries. Robert's photo stared back at me from the nightstand, his smile frozen in time. "I failed," I whispered to him. "I raised a monster. Or maybe I was just too blind to see what he really was." The pain in my chest was physical, like my heart was actually breaking. Scientists say that's impossible, that hearts don't actually break, but I felt mine cracking, pieces of it dying with each breath. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every dollar saved and scraped together. It had all led to this moment, alone in a room, having just eaten dog food while my son filmed my humiliation. I pressed Robert's pillow to my face, trying to catch some lingering scent of him, but it was gone. Like my dignity, like my son's love, like my faith in family. But as I lay there in the darkness, something else began to grow alongside the pain. A small flame, barely visible at first, but unmistakably there. Rage. Pure, crystallized, righteous rage. The rage burned through my tears like fire through tissue paper. I sat up in bed, Robert's photo in my hands, and felt something shift inside me, some fundamental core that had been dormant since his death, suddenly blazing back to life. I could almost hear his voice, the way he'd sounded when facing his deployment to Afghanistan. Olive. When someone tries to take everything from you, you don't roll over. You stand up, you dig in, and you fight with everything you've got. I stood and walked to the mirror, really looking at myself for the first time in months. Yes, I was 68. Yes, I had wrinkles and gray hair and hands that trembled when I was tired. But I also saw something else. The woman who'd raised a child alone while her husband served overseas, who'd earned her teaching degree at night school while working days, who'd faced down aggressive parents and protected vulnerable children for nearly 3 decades. That woman was still in there, underneath the grief and the careful politeness I'd wrapped around myself like armor. They think I'm weak, I said to my reflection. They think I'm stupid. They think I'll just disappear into some facility while they divide up my life like vultures. I pulled out my phone and looked at the photos I'd taken of their documents, evidence of their conspiracy, proof of their greed, but also a roadmap of their plan, which meant I could see their moves before they made them. Jessica might be a marketing executive, but I'd spent 28 years managing classrooms of children who thought they were cleverer than they were. I'd learned to think 3 steps ahead, to anticipate the schemes before they hatched. They wanted to declare me incompetent? Then I'd need to prove my competence beyond any doubt. They were documenting fake evidence? I'd document real evidence. They thought the dog food incident would break me? They had no idea what I was capable of. I opened my laptop, the one Marcus didn't know I had, hidden in a box of old linens. My friend Helen had insisted I get it last year, and I'd been taking online classes. Excel, digital photography, even basic coding. You need to stay current, Olive, she'd said. The world's changing and we can't get left behind. Marcus and Jessica thought I could barely operate a flip phone. They had no idea I'd been building my digital literacy quietly, steadily, the same way I'd learned everything else in my life. I created a new email account, one they'd never find, and began uploading all the photos I'd taken. Then I opened a document and started typing everything I could remember. Dates, times, conversations, incidents, the medication switching, the hidden documents, every cruel word and calculated move. My fingers flew across the keyboard with purpose I hadn't felt in years. At 4 a.m., I crept back to the kitchen and found the bag of dog food in the trash, the expensive, organic kind with a golden retriever on the label. I photographed it, then carefully cut out the label and sealed it in a plastic bag. Evidence. In the refrigerator, I found the container Jessica had served it from, still with residue. I sealed that too. Then I did something that would have seemed impossible just hours ago. I smiled. Not the weak, placating smile I'd been wearing for months, but the smile I used to give students who thought they'd gotten away with cheating until they saw their failed tests. The smile that said, "You have no idea who you're dealing with." I thought about Jessica's consultation with Senior Solutions next month. She thought she was the only one who could make appointments, plan strategies, play the long game. But I'd been playing the long game since before she was born, raising a child on pennies and prayer, making miracles out of government cheese and secondhand clothes. "You want a war?" I whispered to the darkness. You've got one. Tomorrow I would begin. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not Olive the burden, not Olive the victim, but Olive the fighter. The woman Robert had fallen in love with. The woman who'd survived everything life had thrown at her. The woman who was about to teach her son and daughter-in-law the last lesson they'd ever learn from her. The next morning, I made Marcus his breakfast as usual, smiled when Jessica grabbed her green smoothie, and waved goodbye like the docile old woman they believed I was. The moment their cars disappeared around the corner, I put my plan into motion. First stop, Attorney Michael Chen, a former student of mine from 20 years ago who now specialized in elder law. He'd been the quiet kid in the third row, who everyone underestimated until he graduated valedictorian from law school. I'd kept track of all my special students, and Michael had always sent me Christmas cards with notes about his practice. "Mrs. Thornton," he said, rising from his desk when his secretary showed me in. "What a wonderful surprise." His face changed as I laid out the photos, the evidence, the entire sick scheme. By the time I finished, his expression had hardened into something that reminded me of the determined 8-year-old who'd once promised me he'd become a lawyer to protect good people from bad ones. "This is elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy," he said quietly. "We're going to bury them, Mrs. Thornton, but we need to be smart about it. They can't know you're onto them until we're ready." He helped me set up several safeguards. First, a new bank account at a different bank, where I quietly transferred half my savings in small amounts that wouldn't trigger attention. Second, a revocable trust that would protect my assets from any power of attorney grab. Third, hidden cameras, tiny, motion-activated devices that looked like common household items, one disguised as a clock for my room, another as a picture frame for the kitchen. "Document everything," Michael instructed. "Every conversation, every meal, every incident. We're building a case that no judge could ignore." My next stop was Dr. Patricia Williams, my physician of 15 years. I showed her the false medical documents, the prescriptions for antipsychotics I'd never taken. Her face went pale, then flushed with anger. "This is medical fraud," she said, immediately ordering a comprehensive cognitive exam. "I'm going to document that you're sharp as a tack, Olive. We'll have neurological tests, psychiatric evaluations, the works. Let them try to argue with brain scans and certified medical opinions." She also discovered something chilling. The antipsychotic medications that had been prescribed in my name. They could cause confusion, memory loss, and disorientation if given to someone who didn't need them. "Olive," she said carefully, "have you noticed any unusual taste in your food lately?" The vitamins. Jessica had been so insistent about helping me organize my vitamins, even buying me a new weekly container. I'd thought it was kind, but now— "Bring me those vitamins," Dr. Williams said, "all of them." The test results were damning. My regular vitamins had been replaced with the antipsychotics, crushed and reformed to look like supplements. Jessica had been drugging me, trying to create the very symptoms she was documenting. But here's where her plan had failed. I'd been suspicious enough to often skip the vitamins, claiming I'd already taken them. My paranoia had saved me from her poison. I started a journal, but not just any journal, a video diary uploaded daily to a cloud account Michael had helped me secure. Each entry showed the date, a current newspaper, and me clearly discussing the day's events with perfect clarity. I demonstrated my memory by reciting my Social Security number, my Medicare information, details from decades past. I cooked complex meals, balanced my checkbook on camera, even solved crossword puzzles while discussing current events. But the masterpiece of my plan involved Jessica's own weapon, social media. I quietly created accounts on every platform, though I didn't friend or follow anyone yet. I was building a presence, a digital footprint that would be ready when I needed it. I learned about scheduling posts, about viral content, about how to ensure maximum visibility. Then I did something that would have made Robert proud. I reached out to Jessica's mother, Patricia, for lunch. Just the two of us. She thought I was coming to beg for understanding. Maybe to offer to go quietly to Sunset Manor. She had no idea I was wearing a wire. 2 weeks passed in a careful dance of deception. I played my role perfectly, the confused elderly woman growing more forgetful each day. When Jessica moved my reading glasses, I'd search frantically, letting her document my confusion while my hidden cameras recorded her planting them in increasingly bizarre locations. When she switched my vitamins, I'd palm them, pretending to swallow while she watched with satisfaction. But Jessica was getting sick. It started small. Stomach cramps she blamed on stress, headaches she attributed to long work hours. She began missing her morning yoga, then calling in sick to work. Marcus fretted over her, bringing home ginger tea and antacids, never suspecting that his mother, sweet, docile Olive, had been playing a much longer game. You see, I hadn't been giving her the antipsychotics. That would be traceable, criminal, everything I wasn't. No, I'd simply been adding something to her special green smoothies. The same dog food she'd served me, blended smooth and mixed with her protein powder. Just a tablespoon each batch, enough to cause digestive issues but nothing that would show up on a medical test. After all, it was just food. Expensive, organic dog food, but still just food. "Mom, Jessica's really not feeling well," Marcus said one evening, concern creasing his face. "Maybe you could make her that chicken soup you used to make when I was sick." "Of course, sweetheart," I replied, patting his hand. "I'll take care of everything." The stage was being set for my 69th birthday party, which Jessica had insisted on hosting despite her illness. "We can't cancel now," she'd wheezed from the couch. "Everyone's already confirmed." By everyone, she meant her parents, Marcus's boss, several neighbors, and most importantly, her book club friends who loved gossiping about everything they witnessed. I volunteered to do all the cooking, playing the devoted mother-in-law nursing poor Jessica back to health. I made her special smoothies twice a day, watching her drink them while telling her how much better she looked. The hidden cameras captured her running to the bathroom moments later, her face green with nausea. Michael Chen had been busy too. He'd subpoenaed the security footage from the bank, showing Jessica accessing my accounts without authorization. He'd tracked down Derek, her co-conspirator, who turned out to have a history of elder fraud cases. The Senior Solutions Company was under investigation for kickbacks to family members who placed relatives in their partner facilities. Dr. Williams had completed my cognitive evaluation. I'd scored in the 98th percentile for my age group. She'd also tested the vitamins Jessica had been giving me, documenting the presence of 3 different antipsychotic medications that could have killed me if I'd actually been taking them regularly. The police were interested but agreed to wait until after my birthday party at Michael's request. 3 days before the party, Patricia called. Our lunch conversation had been illuminating. She'd admitted to knowing about the plan, even suggesting that Sunset Manor had nicer rooms if you pay extra, and that I shouldn't make this harder than necessary. The recording was crystal clear, her voice unmistakable as she laughed about the dog food incident, saying, "Jessica's always been clever about getting what she wants." The night before my birthday, I found Jessica in the kitchen at 2 a.m., frantically searching through the cupboards. "Lost something?" I asked innocently. She spun around, her face gaunt from 2 weeks of illness. "My medication," she muttered. "I need something stronger for my stomach." "Poor dear," I said, reaching for the blender. "Let me make you a smoothie. Extra protein might help." She watched me prepare it, never noticing the small amount of powder I added from an unmarked container. It was just fiber supplement, completely harmless, but it would ensure she'd be running to the bathroom frequently during tomorrow's party. "Thank you, Olive," she said, forcing a smile. "You've been so helpful lately." "Family takes care of family," I replied, watching her drink every drop. "Sweet dreams, Jessica." Tomorrow everything would come crashing down, but tonight I stood in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd been served dog food like an animal, and I smiled, the kind of smile Robert would have recognized, the smile of a woman about to win a war nobody knew she was fighting. My 69th birthday party began beautifully. Jessica, pale and shaking, had managed to dress herself in an expensive cream-colored dress that unfortunately showed every drop of sweat. She'd plastered on her company smile, greeting guests while gripping Marcus's arm for support. The house was decorated with flowers I'd arranged myself, and the dining table groaned under the weight of food I'd spent 3 days preparing. "Happy birthday, Olive," Patricia called out, air-kissing my cheek, while her husband Richard checked his phone. Marcus's boss, David, had brought his wife, and several neighbors mingled with Jessica's book club friends. Everyone held champagne glasses, toasting to my health with an irony that wasn't lost on me. Halfway through dinner, Jessica excused herself for the 4th time, practically running to the bathroom. Marcus followed, concerned, while their guests exchanged worried glances. That's when I stood up, tapping my glass gently. "I wanted to thank you all for coming," I began, my voice clear and strong. 69 years on this earth teaches you many things. It teaches you about love, about sacrifice, and unfortunately, about betrayal. The room grew quiet. Patricia's smile faltered. 2 weeks ago, at this very table, my daughter-in-law served me dog food while my son filmed it for entertainment. Gasps rippled through the room. But that's not even the worst part. Should I continue, or should we wait for Jessica to return? As if on cue, we heard Jessica retching in the bathroom. Marcus emerged, his face flushed. "Mom, what are you—" "Sit down, Marcus," I said, and something in my voice made him obey. I pulled out my phone, connecting it to their smart TV. "Let me show you all something interesting." The first video was the hidden camera footage of Jessica switching my medications, carefully crushing antipsychotics and reforming them into vitamin shapes. The second showed her planting my glasses in the freezer while laughing on the phone about Operation Sunset Manor. The third was her and Marcus reviewing my bank statements, calculating my monthly profit value. "Oh my God," one of the book club women whispered. But I wasn't done. The next clip was audio from my lunch with Patricia, her voice clear as she said, "Just sign the papers, Olive. You're going to die soon anyway. Might as well make it easier for everyone." Richard stood up. "This is illegal recording." "Actually," Attorney Michael Chen said, entering from the kitchen where he'd been waiting, "it's perfectly legal. Single-party consent state. Mrs. Thornton, should I continue?" I nodded. Michael laid out the documents. The fraudulent medical reports, the forged prescription records, the attempted financial elder abuse. We've also discovered that Mrs. Jessica Thornton has been embezzling from her company's senior living facilities, skimming from residents' accounts. The FBI is very interested in that particular aspect. Jessica appeared in the doorway, her cream dress now stained with sweat, her perfect makeup running. "You poisoned me," she accused, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Poisoned?" I asked innocently. "With what? The same vitamins you've been giving me?" I pulled out the test results from Dr. Williams. "The ones full of antipsychotics that could have killed me? Or do you mean something else?" "The smoothies," she gasped. "You put something in my smoothies." I smiled sweetly. "I put exactly what you put in my food, Jessica. Dog food. The expensive organic kind with real beef and vegetables. After all, if it was good enough for me—" The room exploded. Marcus's boss pulled out his phone, already calling someone. The neighbors were recording everything. One of the book club women was live streaming on Facebook, narrating the events to her followers. She fed her mother-in-law dog food? She was drugging her? Elder abuse. This is elder abuse. Then came the final twist. 2 police officers entered, badges visible. "Jessica and Marcus Thornton? You're under arrest for elder abuse, fraud, attempted poisoning, and conspiracy to commit financial exploitation." As they read them their rights, Jessica collapsed completely, her body giving out from 2 weeks of dog food-induced illness. The paramedics were called, and as they loaded her onto a stretcher, one of them asked, "Ma'am, do you know what you've been ingesting that might have caused this reaction?" I stepped forward, helpful as always. "She's been drinking protein smoothies. I made them exactly the way she taught me. With that special high-protein pâté she loves. the one with the golden retriever on the label. The aftermath unfolded like dominoes falling in perfect sequence. Jessica's arrest video went viral within hours. Marketing exec who fed Mill dog food gets served same meal garnered 12 million views in 3 days. The book club livestream had captured everything, including Jessica's admission and my calm revelation about the smoothies. The internet, it seemed, had no sympathy for elder abusers. Marcus's company fired him before he was even formally charged. His boss, David, personally called to apologize to me, saying he couldn't have someone capable of such cruelty representing their firm. The country club revoked Jessica and Marcus's membership after several members threatened to leave if they didn't. Their perfect suburban reputation crumbled overnight. The legal consequences were severe. Jessica was charged with attempted poisoning, elder abuse, fraud, and embezzlement from her company. They'd found over $200,000 missing from resident accounts. She faced 15 years in prison. Marcus, while claiming Jessica had manipulated him, still faced charges of conspiracy and financial elder abuse. The judge wasn't sympathetic to his, "I was just following my wife's lead" defense. "Your mother sacrificed everything for you," Judge Harrison had said during the hearing, her voice cold with disgust. "And you repaid her by treating her worse than an animal. You filmed her humiliation for entertainment. You plotted to steal her life savings. You are exactly where you deserve to be." Patricia and Richard, Jessica's parents, tried to distance themselves initially, but the lunch recording destroyed any credibility they had. Patricia was charged as an accomplice to conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Their social circle completely ostracized them. Apparently, even among the country club set, there were lines you didn't cross. Abusing an elderly widow was one of them. But the most surprising resolution came from my grandchildren. Emma, 17, and James, 15, had watched their parents' arrest video from their other grandparents' house. They called me that night, both crying. "Grandma Olive," Emma sobbed, "we had no idea. They told us you were getting senile, that you were difficult. We're so sorry we didn't visit more." "Can we live with you?" James asked, his voice small. "We can't go back to that house. We can't live with them after what they did." The court agreed. With their parents facing prison time and their maternal grandparents charged as accomplices, I was granted full custody. It wasn't easy. Teenagers who'd been poisoned against me for months needed time to trust again. But gradually, over shared meals that definitely weren't dog food and honest conversations about their parents' choices, we began to heal together. I moved out of Marcus's house the day after the party, taking only what was mine. The house would be sold to pay for their legal fees and restitution. I found a small but sunny apartment near the high school with 3 bedrooms and a balcony, perfect for my herb garden. Emma helped me repaint the walls a cheerful yellow. James built new shelves for my books and Robert's photographs. The insurance policy Marcus had taken out on me was voided due to fraud. The Senior Solutions Company was shut down after investigations revealed a pattern of kickbacks and elder abuse across multiple states. Derek, Jessica's co-conspirator, fled to Mexico, but was extradited 6 months later. Michael Chen helped me recover everything they'd stolen or tried to steal. The $320,000 from my house sale, my savings, Robert's military benefits, all returned with interest and penalties. Jessica's embezzled funds from her company were partially awarded to me as restitution for attempted murder by poisoning. I had more money than I'd started with, though I would have traded it all for a son who loved me truly. I started a foundation with the settlement, money, the Olive Branch, dedicated to protecting elderly people from family exploitation. I spoke at senior centers, warning about the signs of elder abuse. My story became a cautionary tale that saved dozens of others from similar fates. 6 months later, I received a letter from Marcus in prison. Pages of apologies, justifications, and pleas for forgiveness. I read it once, then added it to the evidence file my lawyer maintained. Some betrayals cut too deep for forgiveness. Some bridges, once burned with dog food and cruelty, could never be rebuilt. 2 years have passed since that birthday party that changed everything. I'm 71 now, and my life looks nothing like I imagined it would. I'm raising 2 teenagers who call me their hero, though I never wanted to be one. I just wanted to be a mother, a grandmother, someone who could fade peacefully into the background of a loving family. Instead, I became something else, a survivor, an advocate, and living proof that age doesn't equal weakness. Emma graduated as valedictorian last month. In her speech, she talked about learning that real strength isn't about power or money, but about standing up for what's right even when your knees are shaking. My grandmother taught me that. She said to the packed auditorium, she taught me that dignity isn't something anyone can take from you. You have to give it away. James, now 17, volunteers at senior centers, teaching residents about internet safety and how to spot scams. He says he never wants another grandmother to go through what I did. Every morning, I still wake at 6 and make my tea in the same china cup with blue flowers, one of the few pieces that survived Jessica's deliberate destruction. I stand at my new kitchen window, watching the sunrise paint the sky, and I think about the journey that brought me here. The betrayal still aches sometimes, like arthritis in my soul. Marcus sends letters I don't read, calls from numbers I don't answer. That door is closed forever. Some wounds don't heal, they just scar over, and you learn to live with the damage. The Olive Branch Foundation has helped prosecute 47 cases of elder abuse in 2 years. We've recovered millions in stolen assets, prevented dozens of forced institutionalizations, and created a network of safe houses for elderly people escaping abusive family situations. I receive letters daily from seniors who say my story gave them courage to fight back, to document the abuse, to refuse to disappear quietly into whatever corner their families tried to push them into. But here's what I really want you to understand. Elder abuse is more common than you think. It doesn't always look like bruises or neglect. Sometimes it wears a smile, brings you flowers on Mother's Day, and calls you Mom while plotting to steal everything you've worked for. It happens in nice suburbs, in good families, to people who never imagined their own children could betray them so thoroughly. The warning signs are there if you look: sudden interest in your finances, pushing for power of attorney, isolation from friends, missing items blamed on your confusion, medications that make you feel wrong, documents you don't remember signing. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. And remember, there's no shame in protecting yourself, even from family, especially from family. I learned that family isn't about blood or obligation or what someone owes you for raising them. Real family is about respect, genuine care, and seeing someone's humanity regardless of their age. My real family now is Emma and James, my lawyer Michael, who still checks on me weekly, Dr. Williams, who became a friend, and the network of survivors I've met through the foundation. We chose each other, and that choice means more than any accident of birth. If you're watching this and something resonates, if you see yourself in my story, please know you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not a burden. You have value beyond your bank account or your usefulness. You have the right to dignity, respect, and safety in your own home. And you're stronger than you know. I promise you that. What would you do if your own family betrayed you like mine did? Would you have the courage to fight back, to document the abuse, to stand up in a room full of people and expose the truth? Tell me in the comments below. Share your stories, the good and the bad. If you know someone who might be facing elder abuse, please share this video with them. Sometimes seeing that others have survived and thrived is the push someone needs to save themselves. And remember, you're never too old to fight back. You're never too weak to demand justice. You're never alone in this fight. Like and subscribe if you believe our elderly deserve protection, respect, and love. Together we can ensure no one else has to eat dog food while their family laughs.